Welcome, GovCon Nation. It's Mark Ryan, here to give some quick updates on what's been going on with the HUBZone program. It is January of 2025. About a week and a half ago, they issued some new rules on the HUBZone program, January 16th of 2025. So I want to discuss those changes as I've already been getting a lot of questions about them. First, they changed the requirement that to qualify as a HUBZone employee, you have to have been living in the HUBZone from 180 days down to 90. So in the past, we'd be doing an application for someone, and the client, although the employee's been living in the HUBZone for a while, if the employee hadn't been living there for 6 months, we might be having to delay an application just to wait till that employee had been there 6 months in that HUBZone location for 6 months. So that's great. They've reduced that to 90. Next, they have changed the requirement to be that you have to be paying the employee in cash. In the past, you had some, not often, but I see some funny things where you could be paying them in rent or some other non-monetary type compensation. Going forward, it has to be cash. This change certainly makes sense. Third, they've changed the requirement that the lease for the HUBZone principal office needs to have been in place for at least 30 days before we submit. So traditionally, it was pretty common. I would have a client move into a HUBZone, execute the lease, and just a day or two later, we're submitting the application for the HUBZone. That's no longer allowed. Now you have to have been there for at least 30 days before we can apply. Additionally, on the backside, your lease cannot be within 60 days of expiring. The fourth change is a little technical, but in the past, the rule said you had to work 40 hours a month. It now says 10 hours a week, which is still basically 40 hours a month, but they're just making it clear that you can't just pay the person 1 week and then have them disappear for 3. So anyway, 10 hours a week. The fifth change is kind of interesting because we had this change just a couple years ago where they added legacy employees. These were employees that lived in a HUBZone, helped you qualify your HUBZone application, but then later moved out of the HUBZone. So they came a couple years ago and said, those people get to still count. We're not trying to hold employees down or something by, having you lose your certification because you gave them a raise and they got a better standard of living. Perfect, makes sense. What they've done now, though, is limited that to only 4 employees per company. More than that, they've come and said that those employees also have to be working 30 hours a week to be eligible to be a legacy employee. So some pretty big changes to legacy employees. Lastly, the sixth change, and this is probably the biggest of all for how it's affecting my clients, is that on all set-aside contracts, you now have to be eligible at the time of your offer. So when you're submitting a bid for a HUBZone set-aside contract, you have to be compliant, meaning if they did an audit on you on the date of your offer, you need to make sure that you were over the 35% headcount on the pay cycle that included that date. Additionally, they've added the requirement that if it's a sole source contract, you have to be, again, compliant, but rather on the date of the offer, it's on the date of the award. So if they go back and audit the date of award of a sole source HUBZone contract, you have to be compliant on that day. This is Mark Ryan with Easy 8A. Of course, feel free to call or email with any questions. Stay tuned as the regs are always changing, and I'll put out more videos with updates.